Welcome to the Breakdance Unleashed series, where we take modern UI patterns, interactions, animations, or simply something cool or fun we saw in the wild, and we try to replicate it using Breakdance and Elements Hive. In this episode, we will look at how to recreate this items list interaction, where we have two columns with stacked images on the left and a list of links on the right. When we hover over a link, the link color is changed and a new image is shown on the left. Let's get started. We'll first add a columns element with two columns. On the section element, we'll change the width to full and get rid of the default padding. For the first column, we'll change the width to 30% and give it a left and bottom padding of 20 pixels to emulate the padding we see on the original website. We can also see that the image container remains fixed while scrolling the list. For this, we will give the left column a position of sticky with a top and left of 0 pixels. Next, we'll add a div under this column that will act as our images wrapper. And add an image element underneath it. We want the images wrapper to always be at the bottom of the screen, so we will give the column a height of 100 SVH, assign a layout of flex column, and a vertical align of a flex end. Next, we'll duplicate the image and work on stacking the images within our wrapper. On the images wrapper, we'll assign a layout of grid and an items per row of 1. On the first image, we'll add two CSS classes, one for the image's default state and another for the active state. We'll edit the CSS class for the default state and assign it a grid column of 1 and a grid row of 1. Then we'll add this class to our second image, so that both images stack on top of each other. We want the images to be hidden by default except for the first image. Under the CSS class for the default state, we'll give an opacity of 0 and define a transition as well. And on the CSS class for the active state, we will assign an opacity of 1. Now let's move on to our second column with the list of links. First, we'll add a text link element. Give it some text, and define the styling that we want. Then we'll create and save a new design preset. Just like we did for the images, we'll create two CSS classes. One class for our default state and another for our active state. On the original website, we can see that the text of the active link turns black on hover and remains black until the mouse hovers over another link element. For this, on the CSS class of our active state, we'll assign the hover color we have on our design preset. Now we can add our interactions. On the link element, we'll create a first interaction with a trigger origin of self, a trigger of mouse enter, an action of set attribute, an attribute type of class, a value of the active class for the link elements we created, and a target of self. We'll add another interaction to show the corresponding image with a trigger origin of self, a trigger of mouse enter, an action of set attribute, an attribute type of class, a value with the image active state class, a target of CSS selector, and a CSS selector with the image default state class, and the nth child CSS pseudo selector with an index of 1 since this is the first link in our list. The first interaction will apply the link active class to the link element, turning the text black, and the second interaction will apply the image active class to the first image, making it visible. Next, we'll duplicate the link element, and on the duplicated link element, we'll delete the active class and update the nth child pseudo-selector in the second interaction with a value of 2 to target the second image. Let's test what we have so far on the front end. It's not perfect yet. We need to add a couple more interactions that remove the active class from any link or image element that may have them assigned so that they revert to their default state. On the first link, we'll duplicate the first interaction, change the action to remove attribute, the target to CSS selector, and CSS selector to the link default state class. Then we'll do the same thing to the interaction for the images. The order is important, so make sure that the interaction that removes a class comes before the interaction that sets that same class. Next, we'll copy the settings from the first link, paste them on the second link element, and update the nth child selector in the last interaction to target the correct image. If we test it on the front end, we can see that it's working as expected. Now we can add as many images and links as we want. The only thing we need to do is update the index of the nth child CSS pseudo-selector in our image interaction to target the desired image. Let's add some more dummy link elements to test that the column's position sticky is working as expected. It's looking pretty good. Finally, let's look at the original website on mobile and apply a similar layout. Looks like the image container is hidden and only links are visible. To do the same, we'll hide the left column on mobile. And maybe change our font size in our design preset as well. The last item missing is a bit of left padding on our links column. Now you can recreate the same UI pattern using any layouts you can imagine. Don't forget to like and subscribe for new videos. If you have a UI pattern, animation, or interaction you want to have featured in the series, drop the URL and details in the comments or share them in our Facebook community group, and we'll consider them for upcoming episodes.